Okay, off we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today because we're going to be hearing from Byron Landiu from Waterproof Awareness. We've been talking about this for the last week or so, that there's been some significant changes or about to happen, changes in the construction code nationally. And there are some really, really important things that builders and other trades need to know about the changes, because it can be extremely costly if you're not aware of how these changes impact you. I was just on a conversation with Richard Armstrong from ProCalc just before we got on, talking about, I'm just about to get on this session and we're going to be covering this. And he said, that's interesting because the statistically, the number one, as far as numbers are concerned, how many warranty claims there are in the building industry is in relation to waterproofing. It's the number one issue as far as claims. So we've got Byron here. He's absolutely at the pointy end of the arrow when it comes to waterproofing and all of the philosophy and the processes around the code and the actual activity. And today he's going to share with you all about that sort of stuff, and also tell you about an upcoming course, webinar course that Builders Business Black Belt is actually part of the sponsorship, and we encourage everybody to get along to that course, because I just feel that it's going to be something that is going to be necessary for everybody to make sure you got your head across this, so we avoid any unnecessary problems. So over to you, Byron. Thanks for sharing and being here today.
No, thank you, Mick, and everyone for attending and being early. So to reiterate what Mick was saying, waterproofing is by far the number one building defect in terms of cost. It ranks up there with the most prevalent defect, but in terms of cost, it by far supersedes any other issue. And so when we think about waterproofing, most people think it's open a bucket of blue shit and paint it on the wall, and she's right. I actually used to think that when I first started waterproofing 20 years ago. The reality is, it is very easy to get wrong. And so the presentation that we're going to go through today is why membranes fail. And that'll sort of give you a bit of an introduction as to the type of training that we do. Part of the presentation, I'll sort of further introduce myself and what I do in the industry. And so I think we'll just get straight into it, and I'll share my screen if you've allowed me, Mick. Yep, which it's all good. And we'll get into it. So I've got two screens here, so if you see my head going from side to side, I'm not watching tennis. I'm actually looking at the presentation as well. This is highly interactive. You're going to have a lot of questions, there's no doubt. The easiest and most effective way to do that is to put them into the chat feature, and then we can try and address them at the end. Because we've only got a small cohort, I don't mind if you pop on, but let's try and sort of keep that to a minimum and unmute yourself so that we keep the flow going. I'll try and address the questions as I see them pop up. So I'll move that onto my other screen so I can see that. Let's get into it. So if you're not aware, we are in a leaky building syndrome in Australia. Most waterproofing failures happen from the 4 to 7 year mark. That is the average. That is the average in Australia. That's the average in New Zealand and from other jurisdictions globally where waterproofing is a significant building defect. Why it's more prevalent in Australia, countries like Canada, New Zealand, is because we build with lightweight construction. Okay, so the building design products have changed over dramatically over the last couple of decades. One thing that is missing is we haven't upgraded our education to meet the changes in the industry. Okay, there's a heavy reliance on the subcontractor to be experts. If they're not doing continual professional development, how can you maintain currency? So we're going to go through all of that stuff. I could talk about that topic alone for an hour, but I'm not going to. Who am I? Founder of Waterproof Awareness and Industry Best Construction. 20 plus years on the tools in the construction industry as a floor tiler and waterproofing subcontractor. First one to put my hand up and say, I made a lot of mistakes without actually knowing that I was making them. Probably taught me now how to develop resources to help educate builders and the preceding and following trades about the errors that we're making in the industry that lead to waterproofing failure. So when we hear waterproofing, we've got to think a little bit bigger, and it's actually wet area construction, internal, external, below grade. So 20 years on the tools, former trade school teacher at Melbourne Polytechnic, teaching Cert 3, waterproofing on-site capacity and in a simulated environment. Last several years, contracted teacher for Master Builders of Victoria and South Australia, developing internal, external, below grade resources. I've taught now over 2,500 students in face-to-face teaching and online webinars in this format, including the teaching at trade school. And I'm a committee member on the Australian Institute of Waterproofing at the moment for Victoria. And we do a lot of training, particularly sort of behind the scenes at the moment with the Victorian Building Authority. So one thing that we need to be aware of, all sectors of the industry are under-knowledged when it comes to waterproofing, from design to installation to government regulation. It's across the board, okay? So the new changes that are going to come in are going to have a significant impact. So what the government started to do now is to develop some data. So back in 2019, Dr. Nicole Johnson from Deakin University was engaged to conduct a building audit on 212 buildings across the eastern seaboard, class 2 to 9 being apartment buildings. And it was directly related to cladding, but the research found in a joint study with Griffith University in New South Wales that water penetration into buildings was a much deeper and bigger issue. Okay, combustible cladding dramatically on the spotlight because of the severity and the immediate impact that the fire will cause, you know, which can cause death immediately, whereas waterproofing, it's a bit more hidden, not the immediate impact. But if we have a look at buildings such as the Miami building collapse, which was related to structural waterproofing defects, 54 floors collapsed, and huge issue, a lot of death, over 150 people. Not sure on the floors, but it was over 150 people died in that building collapse, and there was links to structural waterproofing related issues. In Australia, we're starting to get some data that's coming out with the severity of the issue. So in New South Wales, the Building Commissioner's Office been on the front foot, a lot of regulatory, they're probably leading the way in Australia in terms of regulatory changes. So what ranks high is waterproofing defects. The average building defect bill for apartment buildings is $332,000. So if we have a look at the data we see that's coming out of the back of the reports, that waterproofing is significantly higher than any other defect. We can see fire safety systems is just under 40%, waterproofing over 60%. Then the VMIA, so the homeowners insurance warranty in Victoria, some data that's coming out of there. Top 5 defects by occurrence. Waterproofing ranks 4th highest. Okay, so plumbing fixture failure or plumbing failure in general. So roof plumbing is a significant issue in the industry. So we see waterproofing ranks 4th highest, but then we have a look at cost. $28 million per year it costs the homeowner's insurance, 4 times as much as any other defect. And that's generally because once we have a waterproofing failure, we need to rip everything up and start again. Conducting sectional repairs is actually non-compliant. So the costs are dramatic and severe. And in a lot of instances, like I alluded to before, a majority of the waterproofing failures we see happens in that 4 to 7 year mark. So Matt, where, 5 years is good. Generally, if you see 7 years out, you're probably going to see the 10 years out. The issue I have with the 10-year builder's warranty is that I don't think it's long enough. Okay. We have, and I'm not going to get started on that as well, but, what that realistically tells us is that we need to upgrade our buildings every 10 years then, who's got the money to do that? So what's happening in terms of inspections? A lot of inspections up in New South Wales. There's a lot of inspections now happening in Victoria. I'm based in Victoria. So the VBA, we've got some data here that's coming out of their proactive inspections program that they're now doing. And we're going to see these levels of inspection process and type of regulatory upgrades happen right around Australia, some at different stages. So the National Construction Code rollout's a year later in WA than what it is in Victoria and New South Wales and several other states. But what we're seeing is these inspections, random inspections, are happening on the job. And the information that's coming out, wet areas and external waterproofing is a key area of focus. Timber framing is a big one as well. So what we're seeing is where we have our buildings being constructed and they're left out in the weather for an extended period of time, then the timber's becoming damaged. And once the building gets sealed up, the stagnant growth or bacterial growth that's in the timber starts to grow and rot the buildings from the inside out, because our buildings are now so thermally efficient in terms of regulatory requirements. So we've got a 6-star rating, they want to go to 7-star rating. So what we actually see is the moisture is trapped within the building envelope and it starts to cause growth from mold or the deterioration that might be in our timber elements starts to grow once the building is sealed up. So why is it important that we do upgrading training? And we are going to give you an insight as to the upcoming course. And that's because we're going to see the rollout of the new NCC, National Construction Code 2022, will be rolled out from May 1 for a majority of the states in Australia. Like I said before, WA is a year later. And in there, in terms of waterproofing, there will be multiple ways to achieve compliance, which is going to create confusion. And if we select the inappropriate pathway, or we're putting a heavy reliance on our subcontractors to be all over it, the physical results are telling us that that typically leads to a failure. So you on here who are builders, carpenters, or relating to wet area construction, I strongly recommend that you attend the upcoming series and you get your subbies to attend the series. So what we're going to do is today is show you the level of detail we go into our training, and hopefully it makes an impact for you to see the value in the upcoming series that we're going to run. So the NCC Volume 1, 2, Volume 2 housing provisions, and Volume 3 have all been upgraded. It's just the most significant upgrade we've seen in the construction industry. So to achieve compliance in the NCC, it's a performance-based code, which is great because it allows us to allow for innovation in our design. So a performance solution is one way we can achieve our compliance, and a performance solution is achieved by demonstrating compliance with the listed requirements in the NCC. The alternative solution is a deemed to satisfy, and that is our Australian standards. Now, I must reiterate that the Australian standards are there to give guidance, but they are the minimum requirement. Okay, so a lot of the training that we provide will help you go above the minimum requirements. And then we can achieve a combination of a deemed to satisfy solution and a performance solution. Now, from my experience, and part of what I do on a day-to-day is to write expert witness reports. Some of the failures that I see happened are caused from an inadequate performance solution that's been signed off. So what we're also going to be subjected to in terms of design is if the design is not listed in the deemed to satisfy solution, so our standard or the requirements of the National Construction Code, we must get a performance solution drawn up. Some of the ones that we're going to be faced with in terms of wet area construction will be windows within wet areas. For example, type 2 unenclosed shower will require a performance solution in some instances, and if you do not get it drawn up and it's not verified by multiple parties, you may find yourself in hot water if a failure occurs. I'm just going to skim through this slide. So a performance solution will take effect. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here in terms of the National Construction Code will kick in from May 1, okay, which is not too far away. But a performance solution, prepare for performance-based design brief. And there is guidance in the new NCC about how we go about achieving that. I'm not going to break that down today. Performance-based design brief, carry out analysis, evaluate results, and then prepare a final report. It will involve a design team in order to do this. So in terms of the Australian standards for waterproofing, we have had an upgrade. So from the previous 2010 version, we will see 2021 become mandated from May the 1st, when the new NCC is rolled out, because it is now listed. So 3740/2021 is listed as the waterproofing standard, the referenced document. What is going to be confusing, the way the NCC is drawn up now, is there's two deemed to satisfy alternatives. One being the housing provision standard, and then the waterproofing AS 3740/2021 is another way, another deemed to satisfy. So we've got two now, and they both have differences in information in there, and our upcoming series is going to help you highlight what the differences are and how we would choose one over the other. And we're going to break down the standard like it's never been broken down before, so that you can set yourself up for success in the future and not become a statistic. So what we're going to primarily focus on today, to show you the level of detail that we go in, is the how and why waterproof membranes fail. So we've got a slide up here. On average, 70% of waterproofing failures are caused by incorrect installation of the substrate and the waterproofing system. Okay, so where we see installation 70%, design above 25, and material failure is generally low because it's tested prior to coming out on site. What I do want to to highlight to you guys is that there are a lot of products that don't actually have compliance that are sold to us in the market. So we teach you how to identify if the product has actually achieved NADA accreditation. So when your subbies are using these products within your wet area construction, you're ticking off a multi-stage inspection process. But fundamentally, and this is happening commonly, if the design is incorrect, then a failure rate will generally be about the 100% mark. So I'm showing you these pictures here on the right-hand side because the training that we provide is not only related to internal wet areas, but also external wet areas. And on our YouTube page, the Waterproof Awareness YouTube page, we conducted a recent webinar, which was follow the installation guides for constructing balconies. And I strongly urge you to go and have a look at that webinar to highlight the common errors that we see. This balcony here was drawn, the plans were drawn up by an architect. The design was non-compliant. The job was stopped by the building surveyor. We were engaged to go out onto the job and have a look at what was going on. And instantaneously, because this balcony had structural fall and the sheet flooring was laid in a staggered pattern, in this particular situation, it was James Hardie Skyon that was used. The warranty is instantly voided by James Hardie. So the builders had to rip up the balcony, rip the cladding off. There was inadequate step down from internal to external and start the process again. 30 grand before the balcony had even been waterproofed. If you've got any questions, please type them into the chat feature. And I'm sure there's a few of you thinking to yourself, shit, there's a couple of things that are going to come out here that we may be doing that we weren't aware could technically be an issue. Now, I'm fully aware and a realist. Sometimes we construct our areas and they may be non-compliant and we don't have a failure. You get away with it and that's great. But more and more, and we're seeing these failures become apparent, and that is because the amount of moisture, particularly from an internal situation, how much moisture is now trapped within the building envelope because of our requirement to meet thermal efficiency star ratings, okay? Substrate suitability for internal. So what we're going to go through here is what I commonly see through my inspections. Some common issues that we're seeing from a multitude of different trades that contribute to waterproofing failures. The use of wet area base coat is commonly not used within wet areas. The manufacturers are now changing this. So if we do not use wet area base coat and the installation guide from the manufacturer states that you must use this in your wet areas and that it's covered up with the membrane, and do we assume that the waterproofer knows what type of base coat is used, or are they just rocking up and installing the membrane over whatever is there? If your substrate has no warranty, and I want you to type a Y or an N in the chat feature, if your substrate manufacturer has voided their warranty, do you think the waterproof membrane manufacturer will uphold their warranty? Y for yes, N for no. If you've got the access to a computer whilst you're watching this. So I've got a couple of no's coming through. I can guarantee you the answer would be no. And then the same can be said for the tiling and all the overlaid surfaces after that. So this information that I've extracted here that's up on your screen is right out of the installation guide. So framing, I'm just going to skim through some of these. Pipe penetration should be flush to the substrate to allow the base plate transition over the top. So when you've got what that means, and what I see commonly is where we've got a reducer pipe coming up through our floor. If it's not cut flush, and then you leave out a section of your bottom plate over the top to get over to bridge over the height of the plumbing pipe work, and then we install our wall lining over that, we've got nothing there to support our sealant or our membrane system, and that can cause a failure. Fixings and penetrations. So 6 mil gap, they state, should be the gap from the, here we have a spindle tap, the same should apply for your mixer tap. 6 mil gap from the bottom sheet and the floor, so 6 to 10 mil would be sufficient, efficient. And sheets transitioning down into our set downs. So from our bottom plate into our set down, what you must note, and this is a key issue and failure point, and I used to do this as well. If we install our screed directly on top of the sheet of the wall lining here, you can avoid the warranty from the substrate manufacturer. So you either have to put a metal flashing there or a membrane subscreed detail. Key one, no adhesive under tiled areas, nails or screws only, and that is a requirement from all wall lining manufacturers. If we have stud adhesive just under our tiled areas with the loading, and we get expansion and contraction, so thermal regulation of the building through the daily cyclic weather patterns that our buildings are subjected to, they expand and contract. As it gets hotter, it expands. As it gets colder, it contracts. We can see with the loading that's on the wall, this stud adhesive pop off. So in this particular slide here, it gives installation to tiled areas. USG Boral, so in this case here, this is now CANAF. So USG Boral, they've changed to CANAF. In tiled areas must be fixed full fastener screw only. And then it gives guidance to spaces. So here we've got the picture on the right-hand side. We've got the wall lining installed, no fixings. But we know that tiles are going to transition up there because they've taped up for where the waterproofing will terminate. Sheets can be fixed horizontally or vertically, 6 to 10 mil clear of the finished floor level. If we have a gap that exceeds 10 mil, that will change the requirements of our waterproofing installation. So, and if your waterproofers doesn't have ancillary products that are all compatible within that membrane system, it's likely the membrane's going to fail. Neatly cut out penetrations using a hole saw. Allow 6 mil gap for sealant. So what we see here, what I commonly see, 20 mil gap, that is virtually impossible to membrane with a standard membrane detailing bandage. So our sealant and our sort of looks like toilet paper, our deck web, and sectional pieces of plaster being installed like this just won't work. So this picture here has got a tick and a cross because the fixing spacings are quite good. What we can actually see here, which is no good. So we've got top coat coming into our shower enclosure. Top coat can't be used under membrane surfaces because it contains PVC and the membrane will peel off it. We can see that on that internal junction as well. And these ancillary niches, you need to ensure that you're going to detail them properly because this is simply inadequate, okay? So in this instance, we have our plaster installer. Our plaster is actually creating a problem for the waterproof membranes. So penetrations, I'm just going to use a whole heap of different photos, etc., so you can see what we're talking about. This is what I commonly see. Holes being smashed with a hammer on the job site, both from Villa board and from WR board. Impossible to detail that appropriately with a membrane system. Also, our spindle taps must be, and mixer taps must be serviceable for the life of the fixture. So depending on our mixer tap, if it can't be serviced through the front housing of the tap, we cannot detail our membrane directly to it. So here we have a mixer tap. This particular model, you can take off the ring at the front and you can service the tap from the front of the mixer. So in this instance, you can detail the membrane to the mixer, but this particular one, we must unscrew it from the wall. Therefore, we're going to damage the membrane. Therefore, it's non-compliant. Here we have standard plasterboard also used in this particular instance. Oh, sorry, in this particular instance, this is vanity taps in a laundry that have not been waterproofed. So we can see the membrane around the perimeter, but our laundry vanity taps must be waterproofed. And this particular picture up the top here is to show that the tap block off is clear from the wall so that we can detail our membrane to the thread, okay? And we've got a nice, even, consistent film thickness of the membrane there. So you're either learning a hell of a lot or I'm going too quick because I can't see any questions, but I'm happy for you to have a Q&A section at the end. If we've got enough time, I will have to leave by 12:15, but happy to open up the lines. So what we've got here is an image out of the new wet area standard, which is quite good. What's a conflicting picture out of the NCC or the housing provisions is our leak control flanges must be recessed so that they're at the lowest point of our membrane layer. In the NCC, we actually have a picture where it shows the membrane or the leak control flange sitting on top of the substrate, and then the membrane transitioning up and over. That is non-compliant. There's some of the images, both from the standard and the NCC, are inadequate in my view. And one of the reasoning behind that, and I say this respectfully, where we've got immigrant workers who can't interpret what the compliance requirements mean, then we would go to our next protocol, which is an image, okay? And if the image is technically correct, then they may follow that we have a failure. So we must have a leak control flange installed, not just a pipe riser that we've got by there. Mick says we need to be done by 12, so I'll make sure we are. So non-compliant, and this picture here is great. Now we've got some good images in the new standard for linear strip drains. Okay, so you must have one that has a watermark where required. This particular bathroom failed. Okay, brand new bathroom required to be ripped up again because the waterproofer waterproofed the linear drain in, and we can see an upturn there. So all the water runs through our tiles and our grout joints. Can't migrate under the tiles and into the channel drain. So it grows, a subtile water table grows beneath the tiles, and this is terrazzo stone. So the stone itself started to discolor and will cause long-term issues. This is the detail method that should have been adopted in this particular situation. Brand new bathroom, 60 grand rebuild for that particular bathroom. So NCC and Australian standards differences. So the standard has defined wet areas in different levels of risk. So categories, I'm not going to break this down into too much depth, but this is what we're going to break down in the upcoming webinar series. So it talks about different fall ratios and bidet sprays, etc., different design categories and requirements. Also, we're going to go over the livable housing requirements that are upcoming within the new NCC requirements as well. So what we've got highlighted here is fall ratio requirements. So this is for AS 3740, but if we adopt the NCC 10.2, which is a housing provision standard, the minimum fall requirement for falls in wet areas is not 1 in 100, it's 1 in 80 with a maximum of 1 in 50. Okay. Now, 1 in 80 to 1 in 100, the difference is 2.5 mil over a meter. Okay. But if you pick a particular pathway and you haven't achieved the requirements, and as we know now, there's a lot of building inspectors that are posting stuff about waterproofing defects, you may have to rip up the wet area and start again before the construction's even finished. Seeing it happen on the reg people, this is why I deliver the training I do. Internal situations not ready for waterproofing. So our niches got backfall. Fall must be at substrate level. Okay, at minimum 1 in 100, which is inadequate, which is a requirement from the standard. I would say 5 mil of fall over a little, 80 mil niche like this. But we've got negative fall. We've got exposed gypsum. So the installation guides actually say that our external corners should be exied up. I know that's not always achievable because we get some tapering on the external corners where we've got multiple layers of plaster top coat or base coat. Here we've got no fixings, okay, under a tiled area, non-compliant, and no fixings on our wall lining either, and inadequate spacings of our fixings here. So inadequate loading requirements. So no warranty for the substrate manufacturer. Here we've got a timber bottom plate exposed. Our wall lining must transition all the way down. We've got a large void in our laundry area. We've got cabinets already installed before the membrane. That is non-compliant. We've got paint overspray. Exposed timber, waste outlet not at the lowest point. Okay, all non-compliant will cause membranes to fail. More exposed timber, so poor install of the substrate. We haven't repaired the concrete under the membrane. We've got no gap in between the wall lining and the concrete substrate, so we can't actually install a sealant in this particular area or our detailing appropriately. Great to see the bottom plate is flat, or the pipe reducer is flush here in this instance. Installing our architraves pre-membrane is not recommended. And we can see exposed plasterboard in this particular scenario. So most of the wet area failures I see are from a couple of things. So no water, lack of water stops. We get subtile water escaping the shower, traveling beneath the tiles, and this will just destroy this plaster as soon as it hits it. So our minimum requirements for the membrane upturn are 25 mil above finished floor height. I have heard other associations saying that you can apply your membrane over the top of the architrave. That may void the manufacturer's warranty from the membrane because you require specific details. We've got MDF architraves. Architraves go on after the tiles are installed with a minimum 2 mil gap underneath. In this particular instance, we need to instruct our plumbers not to use neutral cure sealant where membranes are to be installed because our membrane will not stick to it. So here, the wet area floor must be waterproof. This is all sealed with neutral cure sealant from the plumber. Our membrane won't stick, must be removed and reinstalled with a modified silicone or a paintable polyurethane. And then we've got large voids here where we can't do a membrane detail. So we need to avoid these scenarios. Polished concrete. So this mold, within 4 years, it developed within this brand new house. We got a subtile water table that was formed under the tiles because there was a pipe without a leak control flange installed in the shower base, as we can see here. Causes a subtile water table to grow. What we can see here up on this particular picture is the tile actually comes out of the shower enclosure, so no water stop angle under the enclosed shower screen, which is non-compliant. We can see membrane there. We get leaching from the tile, traveled under the tile through the concrete slab, which actually had an additive in it. Travelled through, we've only got a smooth edge here into the walk-in road, bang, non-compliant, both bathrooms needed to be repaired within 4 years. The new standard does give us some guidance for polished concrete installations, but we must have a set down in the entire area, fall within the structural slab. Then we have a topping screed over the top. A water stop angle must be installed here to isolate the shower enclosure from the wet area. So it's a complex detail, and you will need guidance on this, and that's what Waterproof Awareness does in terms of not only technical training, but design reviews, industry best construction, which is a waterproofing compliance tool, digital software, that we help set this up in your jobs so that you can minimize the risk of failure. Some of the terminology, we're going to go through that in the upcoming course as well, where shall indicates a mandatory statement, should is a recommendation, but typical, there's a whole heap of terms that we need to understand to ensure that we're going to achieve compliance. Common membrane installation errors. What I love about this picture is a consistent even film thickness. What I don't like about it is the membrane has been installed directly to the cover plate of the flip mixer. Then we've got ancillary niche, that's got fall in the bottom of it, which is great. In this particular picture, which was in another bathroom within that particular house, it's got backfall into the niche, that's non-compliant. And then when we look closely at the niche, we can see pinholes in our membrane. So no post-membrane inspections have been undertaken, and that will lead to a failure. Okay, so we've got a bit of good and bad there. This joint here, this void here, so these niches, they're very difficult to detail in this particular manner. Actually requires a backing rod sealant, then a membrane detail over the top. Once again, can be done, just requires a process. We're going to break this stuff down in our upcoming training as well. Fillets and bond breakers. So the standard requires some specific sizes depending on our membrane class. We teach you this stuff, okay? What membranes are being used out on the job. If it's a class 3 membrane, which is what our typical bathroom membranes are, then it requires a 12mm fillet in the corner. Now the fillet is measured from touch point to touch point. We can see in this particular instance, the fillet is inadequate. And if we look closely at the membrane, we get pinholing. Would you think that our junction around the perimeter of the wet area is a critical component of the membrane system? Yes or no? That's non-compliant and will fail. So these tools here, like you can see the fillet gauge, highly recommend it. You use it as an inspection tool. Can measure the membrane, handy little 50mm ruler on there, measures the fillet to the corners and measures cracks. Okay. Common failure points. So we've got a pipe penetration, which you could wiggle up and down with your floor. That will cause the membrane to fracture over time. Poor substrate preparation. The water stop angle used around the bath is too high. It hasn't been sealed properly. And then just poor preparation under the membrane. This particular installer was redoing a bathroom for a couple of bathrooms that had failed, told me he was a gun, he was all over it. I went there and I think I identified 50 defects within his waterproof membrane system. And one of the most alarming ones wasn't this particular picture here, is this one here, which is their floor membrane, and they have not even primed the floor. I could peel the membrane off with my hand. They haven't filled the voids where the sheet flooring or the tile underlay has been fixed off with a nail gun. So, yeah, bitterly disappointed there. And you must check in your waste outlet. That's where all the water runs into the outlet, and the water in this particular bathroom traveled down into the outlet, migrated up under the membrane and left the wet area non-compliant. And in this particular photo here, we see an inconsistent film thickness. If you can see the substrate under the membrane, it's typically too thin. So membrane must be measured with a wet film thickness. So most wet area membranes average from your 0.8 to 1.2 is a good film thickness. Some of them allow you to do it thinner. It's a bit of a sales technique from the manufacturer. So you need to understand what the wet and dry film thickness requirements are of your membrane. And then we have sheet membranes as well. These need to be assessed post the installation. So water stop wet area requirements, the standard has great images. The new standard, we run through the requirements of how the water stop angles at your doors should be detailed. This is the same wet area that we looked at before. They did install a water stop angle, but it must finish flush with the finished floor height. Then we can see the fillet gauge being used here. The angle is actually 10 mil minimum. The tiles are 12 mil plus adhesive would bring the tile height up to about 15 mil. So the angle actually needs to be removed and replaced. And then once again, we see the carpentry or the cabinet makers have installed the cabinets, and the architraves are on, won't allow perimeter detail, non-compliant. Compatibility chains. If your installers are using multiple different products and there's a failure, do you think you'll get warranty? I can guarantee you won't. So what we typically see is they mix and match multiple products. It doesn't form a full system. A waterproof membrane requires a compatibility chain to be established, which is from your sealant, primer, membrane, your bandage, even right through to your tiling system as well. I would be using one manufacturer. Okay, so I've put a little card here, do it yourself incorrectly, and that's what we commonly see. The new standard has a compatibility chain listed in there. We're going to break all this stuff down in great depth for you to get a good understanding. We need to inspect, test, and protect our membrane. So I'm sure you guys have probably seen the site inspector out there doing a whole heap of videos on TikTok, etc. Zahir from Site Inspection actually worked with me for quite a while. I helped upgrade his knowledge for waterproof membranes. But these are the types of guys that I train as well as product manufacturers right across the industry. If they come to your job and assess your membrane and it hasn't been installed correctly, they may pull you up on things that you aren't aware of, and it puts you in a compromised position. So this tool here measures the dry film thickness of the membrane. Here is an IRD, so a spark tester that checks for pinholing in the membrane. So if there's some pinholes, you can see there's some little sparks there. You might be able to see it, but the membrane's actually got some holes in it. This tool checks sheet membranes. And once you install the membrane, you must protect it. So the tile has come here in this instance, dropped his heavy buckets all over a nicely tested membrane and now damaged the membrane, which would require a reinstallation. You need to start capturing evidence of your wet area construction and creating a holistic portfolio of evidence. And this will help you maintain compliance to the code, manufacturer's specifications, and ensure that your warranty will uphold. Why am I passionate about this? Why do I know I made the same mistakes? Why haven't we upgraded as an industry? Well, we look at this percentage table again, and then we look at a whole heap of elements, and I want you guys to type Y or N, yes or no, in the chat feature if you think these items are relevant now in our landscape. So workmanship, understanding of material technologies, skill and competence, variety of use, changes in design trends, quality control, testing, maintenance of waterproofing, fixtures of fittings after waterproofing tiling, and professional attitude after tiling. Do you think those elements are still relevant? Yes, they are, and they were highlighted in 3740 2004, and we still see it now. So we haven't upgraded as an industry. So we need to. Finally, housekeeping. Here's the 5-week course we got upcoming. So the Builders Business Black Belt Toolshed are a sponsor of the course. This is what you get. It's an exclusive offer to you guys who have attended today and are part of the membership group of Builders Business Black Belt and the Toolshed. Understanding the NCC and how to apply 3740/2021. Okay, we're going to break the standard down over 5 2-hour webinars. Okay, it commences May the 10th. Real life situations like you've seen in this presentation, how you're going to have to go about and when you're going to have to develop performance solutions. There's active QA at the end of every session with people such as yourself right around Australia, plus other industry experts. You get your own copy of a reduced presentation slide under the agreement with Standards Australia. We get recordings and assessments each week to reinforce your learnings. You get up to 10 points, CPD points with a certificate. And then you get a free trial of the industry best construction digital waterproofing compliance tool. We're going to help you take the guesswork out of it. The course is valued at $497 plus the booking fee through Eventbrite, but we're going to offer you a deal. You can't afford not to be there. $100 off the course. That's valued until the 5th of May. Okay, 12 p.m. Here's the promo code. You click on the Eventbrite link, you put in the promo code, you get $100 off. If you think there's some value in what we're teaching, then I strongly recommend you attend. And further to that, if you know mates that are involved who are builders, even waterproofers, get them involved in this course. It's going to be a game changer. There hasn't been a 5-week course ever run on a standard delivered right around Australia with other industry experts. It's sponsored by the Toolshed, Construction Advisor, Waterproofing Integrity, Aquatite, and my two companies, Waterproof Awareness and Industry Best Construction. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Go on to YouTube, Waterproof Awareness. You'll see some of the previous webinars we've done there. The balcony one's a cracker. We uploaded that not long ago. Instagram, follow the handle on there. I'm always posting videos. Okay, so I want to give a big thank you to you for attending. I'll stop sharing my screen. If you've got any questions, I know I've only got 5 minutes left. There was a lot to try and get through in an hour, and I know it was probably pretty fast paced. But this is what we're doing. Okay, the training is designed to help you navigate the future because there's going to be a lot of complexity and confusion. So be proactive instead of reactive. When you have a failure, shit, how do we fix this? Stop them before they happen. Thanks for your time.
Any questions, just unmute and ask them. I'd just like to say, holy snapping duck shit, Batman. How you remember all of that sort of stuff is beyond me. I know that I get comments when I'm doing my training sessions. How do you remember what to say and how to say it and all of the principles and all of that sort of stuff? And it's because I've been hanging around it for 30-something years.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would encourage everybody to jump in and sign up for the course, just so I'm not 100% sure that you would know everything off the top of your head and remember everything even after the 5-week course, but at least you've got all of the resources. You can keep coming back to the videos. You've got everything that you need to educate yourself on the new standard, just to stay out of trouble. I'm all for improving the industry, but I think each building business needs to look after itself and protect itself. And ignorance isn't a defense anymore.
No, and it's not, mate. And at bare minimum, you're not going to retain all the information, but you're going to learn a hell of a lot, and you're going to know where to come to get non-biased, no bullshit information. Okay, we all of the presenters, we're not affiliated with any product manufacturer. We provide the training that we do because these failures are happening so prevalent in the industry, and we want to help to stop it. Okay, because it affects all parties, from design, builder, subbies, going to court, the homeowner. It's a nightmare. Okay, we shouldn't have to go to work, bust our ass, and then be subjected to this stuff.
Any questions, or are you all good? So I'll put this back up in the tool shed as a replay. I'll put all of the relevant links in the description and so forth, and the discount code. But you know, I know particularly the guys in Black Belt, there's information coming at you from every angle, and we're always talking about different books and this and that, and to educate yourself. I just feel that this is something that that is really, really important for everybody in Black Belt to be able to protect themselves. So,
and Mick, I just wanted to say thanks for the opportunity, mate, and your support. And guys, I'd like to see you there. You know, it's no bullshit. I know what's coming in the industry. It's going to be highly confusing, and I really appreciate everyone's time.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Cool. All right, well, we'll leave it there. I'll put this in the tool shed as a replay with all of the relevant links and all of that sort of stuff to the course, and Byron's information. You can reach out and ask him any questions if you need to about the course, but I encourage everyone to jump on it. Thank you very much, Byron. I love your passion. I love the way that you're trying to positively impact the industry. That's what we're all about at Builders Business Black Belt as well. So we're kind of singing off the same page of the hymn book. And I love your enthusiasm and passion about what you do. So we'll be talking to you all again. Jump on the Feedback Friday for tomorrow if you're in Black Belt, and tell us how you went as far as your objective for the week. Thanks, Byron. Thanks, everyone, for showing up.
Thank you.
See you all again soon.